Right, ladies and gentlemen, what many companies do not realize is that if they do not act now, they risk losing not only their current women leaders, but also the next generation. So understanding and engaging the next generation of talent is now our focus here at the Women in Forum. And who better to discuss this than our next set of guests? And I'm very pleased to say we also have a male voice in the conversation today. So please welcome our panel. First up, we have Marketa Simkova, Partner, Head of People Performance and Culture at KPMG UAE. A very warm welcome. Thank you for joining us. Thank you. Do take a seat. Next up, we have Reem Bagash, Deputy Managing Director of the World Government Summit Organization UAE. A very warm welcome. Thank you for your question earlier as well. That was great. And now rounding out our panel, please give a very warm welcome to Vijay Subramaniam, Founder and CEO of Collective Artists Network, India. A very warm welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. What a brilliantly diverse panel this is. It's brilliant. We've got three really unique voices for this, which is so important. I wanted to start off with an insight into the next generation and the different demands that we're dealing with, because that next generation is completely different to our generation. I'm hoping we're all the same generation anyway. But yeah, they're very, very different, you see. And so I just wanted to know what each of your sort of take is on that when it comes to those demands, and especially with women as well. So maybe a full roundup as well as women specific. Yeah, please do go ahead.
Right. So I do get involved in recruitment quite often, and I interview young people coming to KPMG, and I do see that the demands they have are very different from what our generation used to have. I mean, we all talk about the fact that they want flexibility and they want a work-life balance, and that's absolutely the case. And they are actually not ashamed to ask for it, and even once they actually join our firm, they would not mind actually saying no. Sometimes we would ask them, can you please do this, but they would just, no, sorry, I finished this time, I need to go to the gym, I need to do my thing, and they are not ashamed to say. Secondly, they actually do look for purpose in the work that they do. So actually already during the interview stage, they would kind of actively comment on, for example, the research they have done about our firm, and they are really pleased in the fact that we are involved in environment and social activities, and they say, actually, this is a good selling point for me. I am joining KPMG because I'm interested in this. And they also want to know, once they do their work, how it will contribute to the purpose that KPMG has, how they will contribute to the society. So they want to know what role they will play and how they will contribute. And another thing I've noticed, they are very digitally savvy, so much more than I am. And they want to have everything digital. They want to have everything on their mobile, great user experience, simplicity, all of these things. So yeah, I mean, the other generations, they ask about the title, the money, but it's different with the young generations.
Interesting that, this generation, they have a voice. They're not scared of anything. They're not scared to ask for anything, which is great as well at the same time, because, it's all about empowerment and things like that. Reem, what are you noticing about the next generation, especially when it comes to women?
I think just building off, what my colleague has said, I think one of the concepts are the notions of range. Primarily, we used to want to focus on one thing. I'd go through a certain schooling life, graduate, and I know what job I'm getting. That's completely different for the next generation. There's a lot of unknowns. And for those unknowns, they're willing to build range. And that range is try a million different things and not be scared to even take their time learning those things. And I think that causes that a little bit of friction where they don't mind spending that time to understand what that purpose is and why am I even doing this? And should I be doing it in the first place? So I think another element which is really coming up is the notion of range, and that I'm willing to learn different things, and I'm willing, and I don't see this as a setback. The older, if we look back a couple of years, you'd feel like if you took one more year in university or something like that, you were late.
Yeah.
That concept doesn't really exist at this point. It's what have I done? what did I do? What am I going to do? And I think that it's more about opportunities rather than being in that fixed trajectory, which, the older generations, if I were to put it, were typically bred in.
Which completely changes the whole sort of employment and talent landscape in itself, doesn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So interesting. Moving on over to Vijay, your take, please, because I know you run an artist management company. You've got some incredible people under your belt as well. So it would be very, very interesting to hear from your perspective as well what you're noticing.
I think it's a very tough question. It's one that rolls around in our halls the most. The best way I like to describe it is I think there has to be a balance on the trifecta of, I think, purpose, empathy, and balance. Right? I think that's what these guys look at. I think at least in my realm of media and entertainment, which is a fairly fast-paced, fast-growing industry, I think the average young talent today coming into the workforce, I don't think the usual perils of the usual validations and gratifications to when we join the workforce. For example, when I entered the workforce, I think they hold the same kind of water. I think you have to have a bare level of empathy, although that's a very, very intangible value and that's difficult to codify it. But I think for me, the way we work towards that is we actually try and understand how to build in the value of empathy into their daily work, right? Because I think gone are the days where today with social media being so prevalent and being so pervasive through all their lives, I feel you just need to marry opportunity with the right culture as well in most of these cases. And I think it's rather gender agnostic. I don't think, for me, the young workforce is actually male, female from these perimeters. I think purpose is very important. Because of their access to information, I just feel that they ask a lot of the why as opposed to the how and the what. I think the what is what gets them to the job. The how is what they'll end up doing. But I think you have to keep I find the necessity of re-emphasizing the why over and over again. What part of my job is creating impact? It's interesting because, talking to the average 23, 24-year-old today, is so much more challenging than talking to when we were 23, 24, because, it was pretty straitjacketed in terms of what we need to do. Go work really hard. You had your usual channels of escalations if things weren't working out that well. But I think today with social media, with just generic availability of information, you have to find that balance of nurturing them. It's very tough. I think as you scale, organizations will find it more and more difficult. But I think that's something that you need to retain core with this young force that's coming in. And I strongly believe that's gender agnostic.
I mean, it seemed in our sort of generation, the companies were in control. We were all scrambling to get into these big corporations, whereas now it's on the flip side. So this generation are in control, and it's like, well, if you want me, you're going to have to sort of, cater to my demands, basically. A recent study found out that more women left their jobs in the past year than in 2020 and in 2021 combined due to burnout and lack of flexibility. Which is, I thought that was quite shocking, actually. I mean, this past year, people are burnt out, they're leaving, that's it, sort of thing. What do companies need to consider when it comes to attracting and retaining female talent in particular? And I'm presuming it's the flexibility, but I'd like your take on that, if possible, Marketa.
So actually we went through this as well, and I would say we went through it a little bit earlier. So already in 2021 we had very high female attrition. We always comparing to the overall attrition, and it was about 3 percentage points higher. So it was very worrying for us. So already last year we did a lot to kind of focus and tackle that. And so the first thing that we did is focusing on equal opportunities for women. And of course, we had policies that guaranteed that already, but it was more about how we communicate it. How do we let the women know that actually, that's the case, that there is no glass ceiling, that they have equal opportunities. Also creating more of an inclusive culture. We launched female mentorship program to make sure that our females have someone to look after them and help them navigate the career at KPMG. We launched a networking platform for them. It's called No KPMG Network of Women, where every quarter they can meet with business leaders from the industry, but also from within KPMG and network, create these connections that will help them to navigate through their career. Of course, we had flexible policies already. We have complete flexibility from where one works. It can be from home, it can be from the office, but we gave more flexibility in terms of the timing as well. And so all of this combined, we actually did see quite radical drop in the female attrition, so it seemed to pay off.
Reem, I wanted to talk a little bit about the WGS released a Women in Government Leadership report earlier this year. So I wanted to talk about the next generation within leadership positions, because women globally, as found by this report, are considerably underrepresented at all levels of decision-making worldwide. So how do we nurture this next generation? And is there, a big percentage of young women that want to sort of get into leadership, that leadership space?
So I definitely think the dynamics are changing. And I do believe that there are a lot more women who are being, one thing I always say is that you need somebody to look up to. And the dynamics, when I mean the dynamics are changing, I actually have people who I can look up to who are women who've actually achieved things. So, there are a lot of Emirati women who've made a lot of magnitudinal stances when it comes to decision making. And that actually helps. It's very important to have a puller. There's the concept of I've had a lovely conversation earlier with Vijay today, and the idea is I can officially now go to him and talk to him about anything after our 20-minute conversation, and I know that if I need help or I need advice on something, he'll help me and he'll pull me. You need to have women who are actually there as role models to follow. And I think until we don't solve that issue, we're not going to actually be able to solve, the whole dynamics won't change as rapidly as we want to. I also believe that the dynamics in terms of women representation, you said across all boards, there is a discrepancy when it comes to what some of us can actually do and what some of us want to do. And I think that's very important to understand. I could want to be, the next, billionaire, but I could also be the person who wants to have a very philanthropic NGO. Understanding those wants, and this is not also gender-based, this goes, and primarily I believe for women, finding out what they want sometimes takes a little bit longer because we want to, get the best of all worlds. And I just want to go back to your point where you said why, the layover, the retention rate of, women leaving. I actually think it's a collective burnout from COVID. And I also think, when you have that patience period and then it finally, the bubble bursts. And partially because they experienced flexibility, which was in many cases suddenly taken away from them. And I think that's something we need to also think about, why it was, during COVID, it didn't happen because flexibility was actually given. It was not a choice for us. It was actually just there.
And flexibility is important for women, though, in the workplace. Obviously, if you are juggling family and things like that, and I know it's different for men, but I mean, at the moment, that's what women need. If you have a family and you've got other responsibilities, then yeah, flexibility is key. Vijay, tell us a little bit more about the Collective Artists Network and the sort of dynamic you have under your umbrella and the differences between male and female talent. Is it quite an open playing field, and is it balanced? Or is a lot of men under your books?
I would like to say yes, but I think media and entertainment as a whole is having a tectonic shift in its consumption cycles. Right? If you see what's happening world over, I think the concept of what you consume from a media and entertainment lens has changed quite considerably post-COVID. You've had a significant impact in global box office where actually it's more the big is becoming bigger. I think the middle is becoming smaller, and the small is kind of disappearing. Right? That's literally what's happening. If you see globally everything that's done well, and even back home in India, it's only the big pieces of content that have really moved forward. I do feel that the ratios and the skews are still more on the male side in terms of how your classic theatrical box office revenues world over are distributed. You will still find them heavier on titles that have been capped off by males vis-a-vis females. I think there are fewer and far between examples of that being the inverse. But having said that, I do believe it's getting a lot better. I know that there's been a lot of discussion on pay parity between actors and actresses and how that's worked across globally, but I think that's also a direct product of commerce. Right. It also depends. It has to get validated by the consumer who's buying it, right? And there's data to kind of back this vis-a-vis not. But I feel, especially from a collective standpoint, what are we trying to build? We're just basically trying to build a marketplace for creators, right? That's exactly what we're doing. So, in fact, at home, we are empowering more women creators and diverse creators. And by diverse creators, I'm talking LGBTQ, I'm talking women, I'm talking women in deep parts of India where internet is just about penetrating at scale in the last 4 to 5 years. And we're talking about getting them into the light by having a vocation by actually creating content, right? So I feel that I feel technology is disrupting a lot of media and entertainment in India. I feel we are the hottest streaming market currently. So what we do is we're trying to democratize talent, gender agnostic talent, and figure out how is it that we can give them the best in class opportunities to express themselves via making content.
Very nicely put. We've got 10 minutes. I wanted to give our audience 5 minutes, though, of audience Q&A. So I wanted to draw on both of your experiences, just as women in general, sort of what you've learned on your journey and some of the opportunities and challenges that you've both faced, just as women and the sort of environment here and things like that. Well, what sort of helped you along the way? And is there anything that sort of held you back? Marketa, why don't you start?
Right. So actually, I think what influenced me a lot. I grew up in communist Czechoslovakia, and there are not too many good things about communism, but the one good thing is that there was extreme gender equity between males and females. As in, we were brought up in an environment where women could do anything. We had female miners, we had female in construction, female, forklift operators, like literally women could do anything. And I was brought up with that mindset. My father always said, yeah, you will be the ambassador for Czech Republic. And again, so yeah, that's what I will be. So I never had this notion that because I'm female, there should be any discrimination, or I shouldn't, raise my hand for any opportunity, so I shouldn't ask for a promotion. That was never a thing for me. And I feel like sometimes women, if they are brought up in this environment where it's actually emphasized because you are female, you might face some challenges, and it actually makes them more afraid, and maybe sometimes they are shy to ask for promotion or shy to ask for stretch opportunities, and then it would impact them in their career. So I actually feel really blessed that my parents, my father was so supportive, and that even the environment was very, very equal. And that's how I am, I don't believe that things should be any better.
And that's probably why you've done so well, you see, because there's always been an even playing field in your family, and the opportunities have been there, so you sort of believed in yourself, right? So that gives you the perfect platform to success, I suppose. Reem, your experience, what's helped you along your way?
I think I'll go back to what I said earlier, which is actually having role models to look up to, because if somebody else has achieved it, it helps, like you said, the belief system of it's actually doable. And, the dynamics also have changed where, over the past couple of years, I think I was in university 10 years ago. I shouldn't be saying this one. Now you can do the math of my age, but the idea is education is key, and having self-purpose. And sometimes in environments, you either have people, and this is not, again, you don't need to always have role models who are females, for me to be completely clear. It's having role models who actually believe in what you're doing and pull you up, and that is critical at every stage, whether it's in government, whether it's in, in the private sector. Having people actually believe in the younger generation is also very important, and making sure they're heard. So I think those opportunities and, facilitating those, and I believe I was blessed to have those opportunities. And I hope I reciprocate that also across my team also moving forward.
So it's taking that experience, exactly, and then putting it across
into action, team. Basically, because there needs to be that lifelong learning concept. If you learn something good, take it and also adapt to it. So that's basically what we need to be doing.
Vijay, back over to you. Just before we hand on over to our audience, please do get some good audience questions going in the last 5 minutes. Right, Vijay, how do we enhance the visibility of women then and their contribution? And how do we nurture talent from within different companies as well. That's very important to nurture within, right?
So I think I'll take my qualification of building human brands to answer that question, because that's what I do for a living. Coming back to what Reem just mentioned, I feel the use cases of marketability of talent in senior positions with women has to go up significantly, right? I feel today when you open the newspaper, when you read news, when you see all the big things that are happening in technology, startups, etc., I feel the illustrations of what women are doing to break the barrier. If you actually were just to take a sample set and slice and dice, the top 5 things that happened in tech, the top 5 things that happened in consumer, the top 5 things that happened hypothetically in not-for-profit, I think you'll find that representation there in reportage is not as significant. So I feel, going back to her case, and this is what I do at my company, is I highlight a lot of achievements which are egalitarian, right, which are not gender biased. I feel one step, and I mean, my strong belief, and I have a daughter and a son, so my strong belief is one step towards ensuring the right representation is in your head to calibrate it equally, right? And I think if every leader does that, I think you will have a better conversation on this. This may not be such a hot topic of discussion going, decades on from now. So one of the things that I believe that we don't do well is we don't represent, or we don't market, or we don't what we usually call brand real achievers when it comes to women, right? I think if you do a slice and dice, your ratio could be as significant as 7:3. Right? And I think when that ratio starts changing around a little bit, when I as a CEO start highlighting it more, not because I have to, because that's what ticks the box of inclusion, but I have to because that's the actual reality on the ground, I think that's where you're really building up a unique conversation. So I think if every company, like you said, you have, at KPMG, you guys have various practices, but how are these practices coming to light? One thing is to have a KPI, one thing is to have a process, the other thing is actually to market that process and to actually show results. I'm somebody who understands how do you sell the can and then leave it to the consumer to figure out what's inside the can. I think the can has to look a lot prettier, right? And I think just the overall communication around this has to become a lot stronger by illustrating use cases a lot harder.
All about taking action, isn't it? Right, we hand on over to our audience now. Do we have any questions? Yes, we have a lady in the back there. Please do tell us who you are and which company you are from, please.
Thank you so much. My name is Divyata Rajaram, and I'm the director of a creative consulting company called Idea Tree. Thank you so much. That was absolutely brilliant, all three of you, and of course our moderator. But I've been listening intently, and I'm really fascinated, mostly Reem, because having lived in the UAE for over 25 years now, we've seen a sea change in terms of, like you said, of course, a lot more, not just women in the workforce, but, being Indian myself, I know that very often it's social norms, it's cultural norms. There are all sorts of intangible elements that a culture speaks to each one of us that inhibits us from really realizing our full potential. So my question to you is really about when it comes to Emirati women in the workforce and what we're seeing now, and we're seeing some incredibly not just competent, but absolute role models, as you said, of leadership in our government today. I know we're on the brink of COP28, and with leaders like Shama Al-Mazrui, yourself, I think you truly stand testament to everything we've been saying today. And I would love to understand from you a little more about how do you feel education and the future generation, because I'm hoping it's not something that will end with just a bunch of a few women and a bit of tokenism and a few panels. But the idea, I think, for all of us and what we want to take back is that this is an entire cultural shift, a shift of mindset, a shift of opportunity in every realm. And a conversation, hopefully, as Vijay said, that we will not need to be having on gender a few years from now, a few months from now, hopefully. So how do you, what would you say about that?
So, first of all, thank you for the question. I think I will answer the latter part first. I go back to what Vijay said. I think when in terms of Emirati, the UAE, and the UAE, one primary thing we need to look at is fairness and do you deserve to be in the room, regardless of gender. And I think what has helped a lot is through the education system now, everyone has equal opportunities. And it really depends on how invested and how curious am I in order to achieve. And then you earn your seat at the table. And I think, perfectly how Vijay put it, that, you need to, it's not about, and I hope we don't have this conversation in a couple of years. It's not about who you are, what gender you are, why you need to fix, based on cultural norms. It's, do you deserve to be in the room or not? Are you adding the right value? Are you creating the right ecosystem? Do you have the ideas to put yourself in, somebody else's shoes in the next 5-10 years? Have you got a role model to actually work towards? So when it comes to putting this all together, and in terms of, I think the Emirati story, if you were to put it, it's all about how do I achieve that goal? Do I have the tools and mechanisms to do it? And from the primary age of, from the school right up to the hustle of the university, right up to internship opportunities. Over the past, I would say, 20 years, it's completely, and honestly, education was, for Emiratis from day one, has always been an equal opportunity. In terms of work, that's where it was, there was differences of whether I want to start a family, whether I want to work. That's changing obviously now, but primarily education is key. It's what puts you one step ahead, and that lifelong learning concept, you need to have that embedded in you across the board. I hope I answered your question.
Great question there as well. Any further comments? Because we're going to have to wrap up soon, but would you like to jump on the back of that at all? Any further comments? No?
I think here in the UAE, it's also the government. The government is really championing the women in the workplace. They, for example, launched this Gender Balance Council a couple of years ago, where even the private sector can sign up to propelling women to leadership. That's something that we have done as a firm. And yeah, I just really feel that the leadership here supports this cause.
A fascinating conversation on navigating the future workforce. We cannot thank you enough for coming in to the India Global Forum. Let's hear it for our panel there. Thank you.
Thank you.